welcome back. First thing we're going to cover this week is a controversy that has kind of died down a little bit, happened during our hiatus, but still is in the news. It was actually a story on 60 Minutes tonight, in fact, and that is the Park 51 controversy. Now, you may not be familiar with that name, Park 51. I'll bet there's a name you are familiar with, the Ground Zero Mosque. Now, the first thing I want to get into is the fact that that's really a bad name. It's a lousy name. It's a name designed to go after emotion. It's designed to create controversy that doesn't really exist. First of all, let's talk about the mosque part of it. It's not a mosque. A mosque is a standalone building where people pray. Muslim faith, they pray in a mosque. That's not what this is. It's a 13-story building. It's a cultural center. It's going to have art space. It's going to have, I believe, a restaurant, exercise facilities, and yes, it will have a prayer space, but it's not designed just to be a prayer space. It'll have office space. It's not a mosque, not in the traditional sense. But the really incendiary part, the one that gets everybody fired up, is the ground zero part. There's even people who say, well, this is because the Muslim faith believes that when they conquer someone, they must build a mosque on their conquered territory. What a load of crap. Here's the thing. The mosque that isn't a mosque is being built 2.5 blocks away from the Ground Zero site. 2.5 blocks. Even more importantly, if you go and look at where this place is going to be built, you can't see Ground Zero from it. In fact, once it is built, except for perhaps the very top floors of the Freedom Tower, the new building being built at Ground Zero, you're not going to be able to see this building from Ground Zero. They're physically separated. It's 2 blocks up and a block over, behind taller buildings. You can't see it. It's in a place where a former Burlington coat factory used to be. It's not in sight of Ground Zero, but oh, it's 2.5 blocks. They've owned this land for years. The plans have been around for years. Most New Yorkers don't care. The people screaming the loudest about this are people who aren't from New York. The real problem I have with all this complaint, all this about not building the mosque there, is that it violates the First Amendment of the Constitution. The right to freely practice your religion. Because see, the people who say don't build it there, their thing is, well, build it somewhere else. Build it farther away. Be respectful. How far? There's a mosque already at 4 blocks. Is that far enough away? Well, no, because some of these people say, well, you shouldn't build it in New York. Shouldn't build it in Manhattan. Shouldn't build it in the state. And then there's the guy who's been going around telling people that no mosque should be constructed in the United States anywhere. That any permit for a mosque should be revoked. Because this guy can't tell the difference between a Muslim who believes in his faith and an extremist. There are extremists of every color. There are Christian extremists. There are Muslim extremists. You need Christian extremists? What do you think North Ireland was fighting? And do you think those people were practicing their religion by bombing cars? When we hear white supremacist groups talk about how they want to revert the country back to its Christian beginnings. The Christian part sounds great. It's who it came from. See, that's the scary part, is that when we allow someone to take one religion and make it the primary religion, when the Founding Fathers didn't want that, they wrote it into the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, that the state shall not support any specific religion. It's for freedom of religion, so that you can practice what you want to. By telling these people they can't build, that's what you're doing. You're telling them they can't practice their religion. In the late 30s and early 40s, there was at least one person going around talking about how liberal views and false religions and prayer to false gods needed to be removed, and how it couldn't be tolerated, and how society would fall. He talked about the Christian faith and how we needed to return to its tenets, and how we needed to really follow the faith to return the world to where it needed to be. That guy? Adolf Hitler. Do not confuse what I'm saying. I am not saying Christians are Hitler by any stretch. In fact, what I'm saying is Hitler was not really a Christian. Extremists who believe that violence is the way to get rid of all the others, the undesirables, they are not really Christians. And the people who planned and executed the attacks on 9/11 weren't really Muslims. They were extremists who bastardized their religion for their own viewpoint. Fight those people, absolutely. But people who just want to practice their faith in that building at 51 and 53 Park Place, they should be allowed to. It's part of our Constitution. It's amazing how many of these people want to absolutely claim that we should follow the Constitution, and these activists are trying to change the Constitution and do things against the Constitution. And they do that right up until the Constitution wants to protect those that they don't agree with. At that point, they want to throw out the Constitution or come up with some kind of amendment to the Constitution to fix what the Founding Fathers got right. Make no mistake about it, this is a political ploy. This is about raising the ire of people using ground zero as an emotional wedge. That's not how you remember the people who died on 9/11. The people who went to work every day in those towers. And here's a fact that you probably didn't know. New York Times reported on it a couple weeks ago. In those towers were 2 mosques, because if you're going to call Park 51 a mosque, these were even more mosque-like than Park 51. In one of the towers, a floor or 2 down from the Windows on the World restaurant at the top, in a stairwell, a makeshift prayer space was there for the people that worked on Windows on the World, so that they could do their prayers, perform their prayers, without having to leave work, without having to find another space. There was space for them to clean up, cleanse themselves before their prayers, and space made so they could actually practice their faith. In the other tower, I believe it was on the 7th or 17th floor, there was an actual prayer space an organized prayer space for Muslims. On the day those towers fell, there was likely businessmen, couriers, all types of folks praying in that facility. One in each tower. That means that the day that those fell, the day that those towers came down, in that rubble were the remains of 2 mosques. And you want to say that 2.5 blocks away is too close for a mosque. We'll be right back.